Area DMG.
Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Philip Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and today, for this episode, I guess, of Viral Speak or whatnot, I'm going to talk about books that I read. I know. I saw that PewDiePie video where he was all like, "Oh, I'm going to talk about books," and I was all like, oh my gosh. I follow a lot of people who talk about books. If you check my stuff there, you'll probably find this one little great YouTube channel by this person named Brittany Reads, and that's what she does. She talks about books that she likes. And there's people I know who on YouTube or so who talk about comics they like, and I like that, and I've been like, you know what, I could probably talk about some of the books I read too, because I read a lot of books. I actually go through a lot of audiobooks. If I've got headphones in, I'm probably listening to an audiobook. I like music. I really love music, but I'm more of an audiobook person or a book person. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read, or rather, tell you a bit about this book I read. The Narcissist You Know. Defending Yourself Against Extreme Narcissists in an All-About-Me Age by Joseph Burgo, PhD. Now, Joseph Burgo has been practicing psychotherapy for more than 30 years as a well-respected, his quote, clinical psychologist and marriage and family therapist. Has contributed to New York Times, The Atlantic, and USA Today, and blogs frequently for Psychology Today, which I respect. I know, it's kind of terrible for me to say that about the USA Today, but USA Today pretty much just copy-pastes press releases for any tech news that they have. And a lot of the times, you look at the headlines for USA Today, then you flip to the back of the news section, and you'll find actual news in the back of that may contradict the headlines on the front of the newspaper. Or the front of the newspaper headline might not even match the article that they're talking about, which is really a shame. The era of, they used to call it yellow journalism, where headlines and sensationalism are the big thing. A lot of people read headlines. They don't read the whole book. They look at this and go, hey, or they don't read the whole article. They go, hey, okay, this seems pretty good. I'll just skim through it, whatever. Oh, there's an article, there's a part here about different types of narcissists, like narcissistic parents, narcissistic injury, vindictive narcissist. I'll just read that chapter or whatnot. That's not how you read this book. You start from the beginning, you read all the way through it. That's what I did, and I'm going to go ahead and base my review of it and my thoughts on this book based on what I read. Well, I picked up this book because there was some things I wanted to know about myself and about other people. And after reading through it, I kind of understand a little. Okay. This particular book is a beginner's guide to narcissism. It's the I just found this subreddit book on narcissism. There are a ton of YouTube channels on narcissism and recovering from narcissistic abuse and recovering from codependency and such. And what they actually recommend is this book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, which, by the way, has a new edition from Ross Rosenberg. This is one of the older editions of the book. There is a newer version of this out. I highly recommend that one, because this one is the master class on that. It treats the audience with respect. It's a little bit clinical. It's a little bit like a textbook. But if you want to recover from narcissistic abuse, if you want to understand what's wrong, this is the book you read. However, if you're new to this and you want to know a little bit more about this, if you're wondering, like, am I a narcissist, or are the people I knew or know or love and such, are they narcissists? If you want to know that, check out this book. Actually, the best way to put this is, the actual answer is yes to all of those questions. Because the narcissist you know, basically, runs off the basic idea that narcissism operates on a spectrum, similar to autism or things like Asperger's and such. They're on the autism spectrum. Narcissism, like all mental disabilities or disorders, is in fact a spectrum. And this does cover, kind of clumsily, all the different kinds. Let me go ahead and read you a little bit of the chapter things. Here's the introduction. I have many faces, the narcissistic continuum. And it actually does have your NPD, the actual stuff for here. You know, the basic ideas. Here's a basic diagnosis for narcissism from the DSM. I think this is from DSM-5. And it's like, a grandiose sense of self-importance. In other words, the individual exaggerates achievements and talents and expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. 2. A preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. 3. A belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people or institutions. 4. A need for excessive admiration. 5. A sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. 6. Interpersonally exploitative behavior, someone who takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. 7. A lack of empathy, a person who is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. So someone who might be sympathetic but not empathetic. Empathy. Sympathy over empathy. Like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry you feel that way. Anyways, envy of others or a belief that others are envious of him or her. Finally, a demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. This is a person that gossips about their coworkers. This is the type of person, like some of these ones here are pretty much the ones where it's like, yeah, we all know people who fit into some of these. But in order to actually get a actual NPD diagnosis, you have to fit into 5 or more of these 9 little principles, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 little steps, you have to fit 5 of them. And the way they're worded, they're open up more to interpretation from a therapist. It's you can look at these as guidelines when you're asking questions, because there are questions you can be asked that actually fit into these nicely. Now, definitely, this one's interesting because it uses a lot of examples of patients, and then he uses celebrity examples, most of which feel like, okay, here's the problem with this book is actually the celebrity examples. I know people are like, oh, he's talking about Tiger Woods and Michael Jackson and Steve Jobs and Sarah Palin and Donald Trump and other people. I forgot what other people. Oh, Bill Clinton's in here too. Things like that. Like, people look at celebrities and go, oh, I've heard about this celebrity. But on 90% of the stories about celebrities, another type of diagnosis other than narcissism is actually more appropriate. And on most of his examples of celebrities, not so much with patients. He's really good with patients, but when he tries to use celebrities as an example, it's all like, well, Michael Jackson had a really narcissistic father. Tiger Woods had a narcissistic father. Donald Trump had a narcissistic father. Steve Jobs didn't know his parents, for the most part. And yeah, and you look at this and you're like, wait a second. So most of your examples of narcissists are the adult children of narcissists. But at no point in this does he actually come out and say it. He doesn't come out and say that, well, the adult children of narcissists become narcissists. They either become emotional manipulators or they become codependents, which, hearkening back to the human magnet syndrome, this explains it. They talk about limerence, they talk about CSVs, they talk about more in-depth stuff. So this is the book that you give someone who wants to learn a little bit about it. This is it's red and yellow and white, so it's kind of the McDonald's of narcissism. It's the little thing that, like, oh, this is your cheeseburger, your cheap cheeseburger. This is your steak. Does that mean that this book is bad? Oh, goodness, no. I actually recommend people check this one out. But don't pick and choose through it. Read through the entirety of the thing. What's kind of interesting is that the author talks about, he's like, well, narcissists would get mad at this book. Yeah, narcissists wouldn't read through the book. They might pick and choose through it. Because part of actually getting over narcissism, or actually preventing fully slipping into it, is that most of us actually have a little bit of narcissistic defenses. The basic point of this is the narcissist you know. The basic point of the book is he's telling you, look into a mirror in the morning. Do you see yourself? Guess what? You have some of these tendencies, and here's what you can do about them. And it's good. It actually works that way. Like every single one of the chapters goes through different types of narcissists, and then it talks about how to cope with them. Many different things, like no contact or whatnot. And it has so many different examples. Oh yeah, Madonna's in here too. That's a narcissist. But yeah, King of the World. Let's see what this one was. They go through a bunch of different people, right? Yeah, like they, oh yeah. They also talk about like Anthony Weiner in here at some point. It's funny. But yeah, they talk about different kinds of narcissists. Like the Know-It-all Narcissist, the Grandiose Narcissist, the Seductive Narcissist, Narcissistic Parent, the Bullying Narcissist, the Vindictives, the Self-Righteous, the Addicted. With some of these though, addiction disorder. Yeah, at one point here they also talk about, yeah, there's a bit here where he talks about video game addiction. And I'm like, wait a second, what? Really? There's a lot of psychologists out there right now trying to say that video gaming isn't healthy. It is. It is healthy, but in large measures it's not healthy. But there's actually a real focus on that, and I feel like that can be a problem in the future. But most of the stuff here, like if you need to relate to celebrities to understand a little bit of what he's saying, that's good. But I felt that was less useful and more sensationalist than anything else than the actual talking with patients and such. The best parts of this book are the parts where the author talks about his patients, of course changing the names, of course, and then talks about different things you can do with coping. Don't engage, change yourself, not the addict. It doesn't actually go into some of the other stuff that needs to be talked about when it comes to narcissism. And that's why this is a good stepping book, but it's not a be-all, end-all. In fact, I would recommend that this is a book you read before you read other books. Again, coming back to the Human Magnet Syndrome, which I want to do a really long review about. They're about the same size. Well, actually, Narcissist, you know, is a little bit thicker. But the Human Magnet Syndrome is a lot more in-depth. Anyways, I want to mention that I want to thank Tattered Cover. If you're ever in Denver, you need to visit Tattered Cover. There's quite a few of them. They are fantastic. There's a really good one on Colfax. Yeah, they give me this metal bookmark. Yay! Anywho, this is a book to prepare you for other books. You read this book, and it'll start opening up doors and windows for you so that you can go get into other books and that you can go check out. For example, Ross Rosenberg has a YouTube channel. There's also some other people on that I really, really like. There are quite a few different psychologists and therapists who talk about codependency, narcissism, dealing with narcissistic people, disarming them. Now, you have to be a little careful because there are some people out there who are narcissists who do this, and you'll see that there's different levels of this. This does address some items about it, and one thing I like about this is that in its explanation of narcissism and dealing with different types of narcissists, there are both male and female people in it. It uses both of those genders and such. In turn, it uses those two different genders to explain it, because up until like the last 10 years or so, people looked at narcissism as a strictly male problem, when in actuality, as you'll find out in here, it's not always the father that's the narcissist. In fact, like, there's a new movie out that deals with Tonya Harding, and Tonya Harding is a victim of a narcissist, a narcissistic parent. And the children of narcissistic parents, if they don't go to therapy or deal with those issues, they become different types of narcissists. They either become codependent, which that other book I was talking about, The Human Magnet Syndrome, yeah, pretty much, I want you to check out this book. Go to your local library, pick it up, or it's not that expensive. Go pick it up yourself, then give it to other friends to read. Borrow it from somebody. But generally, I think you should read this book and then do more research online. Definitely, this is a good way to start. Is this a fantastic book on the subject? Well, if you're not that familiar with the subject, or you don't have real-life examples of this, and you're looking to relate to it, or to find ways to know about people in this, or how to deal with coworkers or whatnot, you kind of want this book for that. You want to read through this book to give you some tips at defending yourself. Then you want to go to YouTube, where, guess where you are right now? You're on YouTube. And then you want to go to other channels and other authors and read other books. This, like I said, is kind of the popcorn book on narcissism. No offense to Joseph Burgo, PhD. He created a book that's fairly accessible to the general audience. It's more accessible than useful in the long run. Don't let this be the only book you read on the subject. Let it be the first book you read on the subject, but don't let it be the only book you've read on the subject, because this will, it's kind of like, it points out all these different directions, but it doesn't go as in-depth as it could. Like I said, the parts with the patients work out well. The parts with the celebrities come across as kind of a bit of a slog, especially since when I started talking about Steve Jobs, I'm like, oh yeah, I read that Jobs biography. I've read 3 biographies about Steve Jobs. I know about Steve Jobs. Oh, Tiger Woods. Yeah, I knew about that. Oh, Michael Jackson. I knew about that. Oh, Donald Trump. I knew about that. Oh, Anthony Weiner. I already knew about that. Bill Clinton. Already knew about that. The Kennedys. Already knew about them. Stuff like that, you know? And you sit there and you think to yourself, well, I already knew about that, but there are people who don't. So if this is your first book on narcissism, or the first book you've read on this particular subject, or all you've done is occasionally post in a forum, or read a little bit of a forum, if you're still using terms like fleas and flying monkeys, this is the thing to help with that, so that you can eventually grow onto other, more exacting terms. So in other words, I'm saying that this particular book, it was good. I liked it, in a way, and as much as one can like the subject matter on it. And I felt that it's a really good first step. If I were giving it a score out of 10, I would give this one, if you're not familiar with narcissism, or you're just finding out about this and you want to learn something about it, I would give this an 8. If you're an experienced person, you've known about this and you're in therapy, and you've got access to other books and such, I would give this about a 4. It's not an indictment of it. I think this is the one that you give to someone if you kind of want to let them know a little bit more about maybe themselves or about other people. You read it, and then it kind of opens you up to understand things that you need to change maybe about yourself, or things that you can't change about other people, but how to cope with it. And in that regard, I feel that this book is incredibly useful. It's incredibly useful because it is a really good first step. And just look up a lot of these things, like Psychology Today has stuff, Psych2Go has stuff, Ross Rosenberg has stuff out there. I think there's some other ones like Faith and Light or so. There's this one guy, I think his name's like J.P. Spears. He does these funny psychology videos where he's kind of a little pretentious, but his videos about actual philosophy and psychology and meditation and therapy are incredibly useful, and I definitely recommend him as well. But yeah, if you want to know more about this subject, pick up this book at your local library, or borrow it from a friend, or just pick it up yourself because it's cheap, it's in paperback, and read it. Read all the way through it. All the way through it. And then go to the back here, right? And look at the end notes. Because this guy here makes a lot of stuff, like the suggested reading, Disarming the Narcissist and Surviving, Why It's Always About You, The 7 Deadly Sins of Narcissism, The Restoration of Self, The Drama of the Gifted Child, which I'm trying to find a copy of that one. That one sounds pretty good. Narcissistic and Borderline Disorders, Integrated Development Approach. There is a lot in here. There's a lot of really good ones. What's kind of sad about this one, though, is that this book by Joseph Burgo doesn't actually recommend the human magnet syndrome. Maybe it was written before it, or maybe he just doesn't know about it, or maybe there's a reason you see Joseph Burgo on like MSNBC and such talking about politics, but you see Ross Rosenberg on YouTube and at conventions and seminars actually running around and doing one-on-one with people and teaching more people about that. But like I'm saying, this is kind of the McDonald's book on narcissism. And was Ray Kroc a narcissist? You kind of have to be in sales effectively. You have to have some of those narcissistic defenses. But there's a difference between narcissistic defenses and actually being a narcissist, which is something that doesn't seem to be demonstrated or talked about here. His thing is that everyone has these defenses, everyone does that, but I don't really explain why, whereas the human magnet syndrome goes over it, and to a point where it goes all the way over it, like the causes of this, and it goes into more and more disorders, it goes into everything you want. And the thing about that is actually also, human magnet syndrome is written by Ross Rosenberg, who is also a Christian, and has some of that's reflected in there. He mentions it once or twice. But being a Christian gives you an interesting perspective on psychological help and therapy. And that seems to be missing from the Joseph Burgo's book, which feels like this is more made for this is a widescreen audience. Like I said, it's the McDonald's of books on this subject. Whereas this one, which I want to review at a different time and talk about more in depth in this time and explain CSV and all that, is more like steak. This is a salad. Okay, this one is a salad from a gas station. This one is all your freshly picked and cut vegetables straight from your own garden. So, yeah, is this a good book for people to start with? Yes. This is a good book for people to continue with. But yeah, we're going back to this one right here. The Narcissist You Know by Joseph Burgo. It's pretty good, actually. I think this costs about, what do they charge for it? It says it's $16 US, $22 Canadian. You can find this as cheap as $10. And often you'll find stuff on sale and whatnot. This is the one that you'd find at Target. Let's really quickly talk about the table of contents and what it goes through. Introduction, the many faces of many different faces, narcissistic continuum, narcissism spectrum. I'm easily wounded, self-esteem and narcissistic injury. Why compliments or lack of compliments or criticism hurts. I'm a winner and you're a loser, the bullying narcissist. The thing is, this actually kind of breaks it down pretty simplistically. A narcissist is a person who doesn't have any empathy for you. They don't put in the same amount of empathy. They don't put in the same amount. That's because they're setting you up for something to lose. They want you to be a loser. They want you to be dependent on them. They want you to feel bad about that dependency. And then eventually they want to injure you in some way because they're hurt. I guess the best way to put it would be that hurt people hurt people. And that's really the truth of it. I mean, hurt people hurt people. Yeah. Anyways, the next one, and then, you're everything I always or never wanted to be, the narcissistic parent. Now, there's two types of children that narcissistic parents create. The type that is codependent, or the type that is a emotional manipulator or a narcissist themselves. Actually, codependents are a type, they're on that spectrum. And then there's the I want you to want me, the seductive narcissist. This is a person who uses sex as a weapon. We know them. But there's more to this than is in here. This is a good introduction to it, though. I'm king of the world, the grandiose narcissist. I have so much to tell you, the know-it-all narcissist, which is a person who will be like, well, actually, and even though that everybody does that, when we learn new things, we want to share new things with people, or if we know when someone's wrong on stuff, we want to correct them. There's a difference between that and the know-it-all narcissist, though. The know-it-all narcissist is, well, you didn't know that because you're stupid. Oh, you don't know why socialism is so great. That type of person. You know those people. Well, actually, jet fuel can't melt the steel beams. We all know them. Or, I'm right and you're wrong, the self-righteous narcissist. Challenge me and I'll hurt you, the vindictive narcissist. This is the type of narcissist that will, like, put a brick through your window. They're the people who will make you suffer for something. They'll do ghosting. They'll do. What's funny is that one of the best ways to deal with narcissists is called no contact. But narcissists also do no contact. It's essentially, they're like, and the reason for it is because they want you to feel lost and struggled, and that you're going crazy, that you're the one that's the problem, that you've done everything wrong, and they want you to stew over it. They want you to wake up in the morning and wonder what they're doing, but they don't actually think about you. That's one way that the vindictive narcissist works. And then, my drug means more to me than you do, the addicted narcissist, which is actually a different thing. I mean, you could say it's on the spectrum of narcissism, but it's also on the spectrum of addictive personality disorder, which people have when they're addicted to gambling or certain types of drugs or certain types of behavior. A person who's addicted to sex has an addictive personality. They're addicted, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily an addicted narcissist. They could be horribly depressed, and that feeds into that addiction, because it's kind of like I do this because it's the only time for a little while I feel alive. And that's not narcissism, that's something else. But yeah, or I'm difficult but not impossible to manage, coping with the narcissist you know. Generally, the best part about these though, oh yeah, there's a part here where he goes over essentially a spectrum here. If many of these items in most categories seem to apply, because remember that thing I mentioned with the 9 categories? He actually breaks it down into A, B, C, D, E, F. Into 5 different little things here. Empathy and emotions, self-image and social comparison, impulsivity, interpersonal relationships, and moral code and personal responsibility. Like he says originally here, narcissists are hurt people. And then they take that hurt out on other people. Hurt people hurt people. Sometimes people hurt people without knowing, but a narcissist fully plans and knows this thing from the first time you meet them. They're not meeting you as someone they might want to talk to or work with or love. They're looking at you as a victim. Think like the other mother in Coraline, where it's not so much you want someone to love. You just want something that's not her, maybe something to eat. Because guess what? People have emotions, and then there are people who don't have certain emotions. They may be extreme with certain other items, but they're not fully equipped in other emotional areas. And because they're not fully equipped in other emotional areas, they need that from someone else, or they need someone else to feel their pain. So let's actually, before we get done with this article, because with this book article, it's only like, this book is only about 250 something pages, right? Yeah, 250 pages. So it's kind of almost an article to me. I think I finished this in I picked it up, and then I read it a little bit while I was at work, and I read through a bit there. I got through the first 2 or 3 chapters that within the first night I picked it up, and then I finished the rest at work, And I felt like, well, I said it's a popcorn book. It was really easy for me to finish. But yeah, let me go over a little bit here. Like, we go over empathy and emotions. You can actually go through this, and you might know people who fall into this. Like, empathy and emotions. 1. Feels uncomfortable with his or her emotional life. 2. Lacks interest in you or your feelings. 3. Criticizes you for feeling too much or for overreacting. 5. When angry or upset, often denies feeling that way. 6. Feels envious or imagines other people to be envious of him or her. 7. Goes on the attack when hurt or frustrated, explodes with rage, sometimes even physically. A narcissist will hit you. Many of them will. Lacks insight into the way his or her behaviors affect others, and then they won't apologize for it. They'll be like, well, you shouldn't have done what caused me to hit you. Do you see how that works? That's horrible. Anyways, B. Self-image and social comparison. Preoccupied with the way he or she is viewed by others. And sometimes they'll ask you to defend them in that. 2. Arrogant, vain, and haughty, exaggerates accomplishments. 3. Makes obvious plays for attention or admiration. 4. Hyper-competitive and ambitious. 5. Easily slighted, tends to misinterpret innocent remarks as put-downs. Actually, there's a lot of people you'll find on Tumblr who fall into that one right there. But yeah, you have to fit like a lot of these in these 5 categories to fit up those 9 categories that I mentioned before. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Makes contemptuous remarks about other people behind their backs. Now, one thing I mentioned in our thing about ambulatory culture is that a stationary person looks at the person who has slighted them in some way and attacks the person. An ambulatory person looks at the actions of the person and attacks the actions, not the person. And in a way, a stationary person is someone who may also be a narcissist, because they're not standing still. They're not going forward. I mean, they're not going forward. They're standing still. And ridicules you and makes you feel bad about yourself. The thing about it is, this is something that people who are victims of narcissists will do back to a narcissist. Eventually, a person who's empathic or has a lot of empathy will start mirroring narcissistic modes. And so, as a narcissist continues to ridicule you or make you feel bad about yourself, many things like your weight or your hair, the little things you do is like, oh, I wish you'd stop doing that thing with like your fingers or any twitches or tics that you have. They'll point those out and they'll use them to injure you, to insult you, to make you feel bad about yourself. C. Impulsivity. Lacks self-control, spends beyond his or her means. A lot of us do that. A lot of people who aren't narcissistic do that because of other items, which is kind of sad actually. And then people who are who have suffered from narcissistic abuse will also do this as well because they're trained to do it. A narcissist doesn't. They love bomb you, which is like, if you go watch the movie Coraline, which I'm gonna have to break down for you because it's a perfect example of this. When Coraline meets the other mother, she love bombs her with things that she knows that she likes from spying on her. And the reason for this is to get her into this and to get her addicted to it or dependent on it. She takes away the children's eyes because the eyes allow them to see. By doing that, they give up control. They give up the ability to escape, to find a way out, to see a way out. Okay, overeats, drinks too much, or abuses drugs. Tends to be a workaholic. Initiates grand projects but can't follow through. Falls quickly in and out of idealized romantic love. Makes important life decisions with little forethought. Is unfaithful in marriage or committed relationships. And that's all sorts of different things too, like unfaithfulness is actually something that it can be physical, it can be emotional, and it can be mental. Emotional infidelity is a word I actually was taught last year, actually. I hadn't heard about it before, and it was kind of interesting to hear about it and learn about it. Anyways, interpersonal relationships. Is self-absorbed, controlling, and exploitative. Can be seductive and manipulative. tends to be overly jealous and possessive. What are you doing on your phone? That type of thing. You know, the people who they want to know all your passwords. They want to keep keys. They do this type of stuff. They want to keep some type of attachment or some type of control. And then dominates conversation and frequently interrupts others. A lot of people who aren't narcissistic do this as well. But sometimes you have to, depending on where you're going with like a conversation or with a interview, you do have to take control of a conversation. But it's different from dominating the conversation. Is suspicious of other people's motives, always imagining the worst. That one right there is suspicious of other people's motives, always imagining the worst. Like I said with stationary people look at what's wrong, what's happening here, something's going to go wrong. They meet someone new and they'll automatically, from the way the person looks, assume that this person is the worst. An ambulatory person would be, we want people to be better. We want to be better and we want to make ourselves better. So if we can be better ourselves, we can make the people around us better. That's the eventual hope. And demands uncritical allegiance. In other words, you're not allowed to criticize such and such thing. And even, it's okay if you're criticized and you respond to criticism, and that's not narcissism. It's if you demand it, like, no, everyone should do this, and then you enforce that. That's actually, that's the next one up here. Bullies others to get his or her own way. It's the, you're in my house type mentality. It's the spying on everyone mentality. It's the dragging people away in the middle of the night and putting them in Guantanamo Bay mentality. Let's go back to the other stuff here. Bullies others to get his or her own way. This is the, you need to do this or else, or you need to do this or I'll take something away. Those are all these different types of bullying. Somebody who puts limitations on love, or a monetary value on love, or you need to do this or else. You need to do this before this. A person who's like, well, I don't want to do this with you until you have achieved this goal. That's bullying. And that's actually part of this here. Moral code, it is better to expect people to get better and to do better. And in a way, you need to, we do need to be able to demand some of that from people. But there has to be an empathy when it's not going as quickly as you'd want, or as well as you'd want, or as successful as you want, because life is messy and complicated. You're running. Ambulatory people are always in motion, and so sometimes you stumble and fall, and it happens. But if you start purposefully causing other people to stumble and fall, or constantly berating them for their stumbles and falls, you may fall into this part here. Moral code and personal responsibility. Lies or distorts the truth for personal gain. Well, I wasn't expecting to see anything in the forest. We know who that is. But we also know so many other people who do this. And they'll just downright say stuff. Hey, look at the president choking the koi. Or, look at what happened here. Well, the people who will distort or lie about the truth for personal gain. When I first got into journalism, I told people that my major was journalism, my minor was psychology, because my minor was psychology. I didn't read many psychology books, though. It was more about journalism. And it was because journalists tell you what to think, psychologists tell you why you think it. That's actually changed a bit because journalism nowadays they're telling people what to think more than like the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the news. There's a difference between someone who reports the news and someone who flavors the news. If all you watch is Fox News, all you'll put out is Fox News. If all you watch is MSNBC, that's all you'll know. If all you do is read angry people on Facebook, you're going to feel empathy with those angry people and become an angry person yourself. And that causes you to be the angry leading the angry, or the blind leading the blind. Anyways, blames others or makes excuses for his or her mistakes. It's like, oh, this would be, we all do this. If only this person hadn't done this thing, Actually, there's a difference between this though. Blaming others and makes excuses for his or her mistakes. This is blames others. This is blames others as in other people, but not others' actions, because people's actions can actually harm you. Other people can't harm you. So blaming other people for something is different from blaming other people's actions for something. Remember, this is the I'm angry at what you've done, I'm not angry at you. It's in the Bible, it's like love the sinner, hate the sin. Right? Plays the victim, uses guilt to manipulate you. We all do this. And yeah, that happens. But a narcissist will play the victim all the time, specifically for certain types of reasons. Like, well, the best way to put plays the victim would be, my day was bad, and you should feel bad that my day was bad. I want you to feel bad for me, not with me. It engages in illegal or unethical behavior, anything from drug use, certain type of illegal drug use, to speeding, to things like stealing or shoplifting. And remember, these are also things that people under a lot of stress will do too. People who are the victims of narcissistic abuse will do these things too because they're mirroring that behavior. Feels entitled to have what he or she wants without putting out the effort to get it, without making the money to get it, or without putting out those emails or putting out the stuff to get that for them. I mean, we all want things. But this is like, but actually with this here, to feel entitled means that you feel that you should have something, but even if you don't have it. That one's an interesting one in that, like, well, why don't I have a nicer car? Why don't I have this? Well, it must be other people that do this. It's all the 1%. When someone goes, oh, it's the 1%, or oh, it's those millionaires and billionaires getting all the money, that's because they're doing something there. Unless they're actively hurting you with their actions, their existence doesn't hurt you, and it's not getting in the way of you getting something unless they're actively doing something to do it. Remember, love the sinner, hate the sin. Don't blame others actions, or that type of thing, you know? And then it comes across as self-righteous and bulletproof during arguments. We've all had that. Anyone who's worked in customer service has that. No, I'm right. This is what your policy is. I'm reading my policy here. No, this is what your policy is. Well, you didn't do that. I love this one bit. I think Mark Lowry had it in one of the stand-up things. He's a Christian comedian. He goes, the most toxic thing you'll ever hear in a church or in a business is, well, we never did it that way before. But yeah, that's the righteous and bulletproofness during arguments. Everything is about, like, this is a person who if you attack their logic, they'll attack you. They'll be like, well, you could be like, well, this is going to help this and this and this, but they go, well, you said something sexist before, or you look bad. They attack the person, not the action. And then inspire self-doubt when you disagree, shames or humiliates you. If you ever lay awake at night wondering, like, well, I didn't get such and such thing, or I got a rejection letter from this, what am I gonna do here? If that's directed at how you're going to explain it to someone, because, or like, well, I don't like this, or I don't like that, but I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that. Okay, I'll just not ask for that, or I feel left out and humiliated and hurt, but I'm not going to confront this person because, well, what if I'm in the wrong, or what if they hurt me? What if they take things from me? What if they do things to me? That's what self-doubt is. It's that fear. And people that inspire that fear fall into these. And it's just a question, like he says, it's all a question of degree. And this is a very important book, I guess is the best way to put it. It's important, but it's also the McDonald's of this. If you're not new to this, you can kind of skip this. You can go on to other books. But if you are, you need to read this. It's kind of like there's a book by, I think, Lynn Truss or something. Lynn Truss or one. She wrote the book called Eat, Shoots, and Leaves, which is about grammar. And this is like that about narcissism, where there's more hardcore books that have better information, are arranged in a better way, and explain things a bit better and more in depth. And actually, but this one is this is comfort food. McDonald's is comfort food. And this is a comfort food for someone who doesn't know about this yet. This is for the narcissist you think you might know, is the best way to put it. It's a good first step. And I've been talking about it and reviewing it for like almost an hour, and I hope that you have stuck with me through that. I would recommend picking this up. You can pick it up at Barnes & Noble if that's where you want to go. Other local bookstores, which I recommend over Barnes & Noble. I would actually recommend you go visit your local bookstore and patron them. Be a patron of them before you be a patron of a McDonald's, of a Walmart or a Target or a Barnes & Noble. I would actually recommend, because like you can find this at those. You can order it from Amazon. But I actually recommend that you order it from a local bookstore. Pick this up at a local bookstore. Like I mentioned, like your Tattered Cover or your Read in Black, which is another one around here, or some of these other ones. You should definitely check out your local ones. There's this one called Goddess Books. It used to be called Isis Books, because the goddess Isis. And then somebody put a brick through their sign and through their door, and I was like, I followed them on Facebook. And that irritated me that happened, because I love local bookstores, and I think you should support local bookstores. You should order this book from those. If you don't know anything about narcissism, this is a good way to start. And I know I've been overly harsh on it, saying, hey, it's like an 8 out of 10 if you haven't encountered this before, if you're fairly new to it, or if you just want a quick refresher, I guess, and a 4 out of 10 if you're more experienced with this, or if you're in therapy for dealing with narcissistic abuse and all these other items. It's like I said, it's comfort food. I think it's worth the price. I think the price right now for this is what, $16, $22 Canadian. I actually suggest that you pick it up for that. If you can find it for a little cheaper, pick it up. If you can find it at your local library, check it out. Read through it. I really recommend this one, and I think you should read it. Especially if you're new to this. But if you're a little further on all that, it's not going to be that much of a time investment. Check it out from the library, borrow it from somebody, or after you've read it, give it to someone else who hasn't read it or might want to read through it. Definitely worth checking out. So my suggestion, this is the narcissist you know, or the narcissist you might know, and you should get to know this book. So yeah, I do recommend it, but I recommend it as a stepping stone for other books. Again, I'm going to do a review about this one in the future, because, oh my goodness, this one helps. This one lets you know about the problem. It gives you some things to arm you against the problem, like some of the casual nature of that. But this one will heal you. Like, really good. Ross Rosenberg is really good. He's not a PhD, but it doesn't matter. It's really good. And this one is a really good way to start out. Like, learn to identify this. It will help you look at things in a different perspective, whereas this will tell you what you should know about those things from that perspective. So yeah, I'm recommending this book with caveats. And I want to thank you for hanging around for the entirety of this really long rambling video about a book review. I mean, it's a 15-minute long or so book review from a channel that does video games. So yeah, Thank you for sticking through this. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Hit that share button if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And then ring that little bell so that you are notified whenever we have a brand new video here on Area DMG. Because, you know this really long book review that I've done here? I'm going to do this with other books. I'm going to do this with books that are not self-help books. I'm going to do this with sci-fi books and comic books. I'm going to do this with movies. And I'm going to do this again with animation and such. And I want you to be notified whenever we have new videos out there so you can spend some time with us, learning new things, finding new things, and maybe getting interested in this book, which you should do. If you don't know anything about the subject, or if you think you know something about the subject, read the entirety of this book. Don't pick it up and cherry pick through it. Read all the way from cover to cover. Do that. And then from there are so many other books too, which will bring you even closer to understanding more about yourself and about other people. But this is a good way to start. And, well, until the next video comes out, and actually, before that, you should go out and pick up this book if you haven't already. You should add it to your Amazon cart, or, like, I really suggest you go to a local bookstore and pick it up. Order it in from the local bookstore. Help your local bookstore. Support your local bookstore. I can't emphasize that enough. I can't emphasize that enough. I can only reiterate it. But yeah, until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.